They removed the default 2D side-scroller template, which was previously available in Unreal Engine 4. I'm not sure why they did this, so in this tutorial, I'm going to go over how we can create our own 2D platformer template from complete scratch in Unreal Engine 5, exactly like the one being shown on the screen right now. Also, if you're interested in creating a full 2D platformer game with enemies and items, check out my 2D platformer course on Udemy, link will be in the description of this video. With all of that said, let's get started. So to get started, you just want to open up the Unreal Engine 5 project launcher and go to the Games section, and as you can see, there's no 2D template, so we're going to create our own one in this video. So what you want to do is select the blank template, so this will just create a blank project with no code, and then give it an appropriate name. So I'm just going to call mine Side Scroller, and then click Create. Once you've done that, it should load this blank Unreal Engine project. And in this tutorial, we're going to be referencing our content drawer quite a lot. So to make it so that it's permanently in this position, because if I click somewhere else, it will disappear. We just want to go to Window and go Content Browser, and then select Content Browser 1, and this will always be here. So the next thing we're going to do is import the sprites and images that we're going to use in this tutorial. So I have this folder of all the images and sprites that we're going to use in this tutorial. I'll leave a link in the description of where you can download these. But what you want to do is once you've downloaded them, just select everything in this folder and just drag it into the content folder inside of your project. Then with everything selected, just right click on it and go Sprite Actions and apply Paper 2D texture settings, and this will just make it so that it's okay for Unreal Engine. Now that we've imported all the images that we're going to use, the next thing we're going to do is create a 2D player character which can basically move around and jump. And in the content folder, you can see that we've imported a full idle, jump and run animation. So the next thing we're going to do is basically turn all of these images into flipbooks so that they can be used when we set up our 2D player character. So let's first start off by creating this full flipbook. So in order to create an animation inside of Unreal Engine, first you basically want to get your image, which we've done, and import it. Then what you're going to do is just right click and go Sprite Actions and click Extract Sprite. And then there are two ways we can extract sprites inside of Unreal Engine. We can do auto, so this will just automatically get every single image and try and create a sprite out of it. Or we can do grid, and here with grid we can basically specify the areas that we want it to extract. So I know that for this image we want the cell width to be 64, and where these two lines are, it's basically going to create a sprite out of each of these images. So we can just click extract, and we can see it will create these two sprites. In order to use these sprites inside of our 2D character, we need to make them a flipbook. So to do that, we can just select this first sprite, and then this second sprite, and then right click, and go create flipbook. And then I'm just going to call this man full, and this will create a flipbook animation of the mannequin character falling. And you can change the speed of this flipbook by just changing the frames per second here. So if I made this 10, it's going to be a lot slower, but if I made this like 30, it's going to be super fast. So you can just play around with whatever speed you think is appropriate. So we can just save this and close it. Next, we're going to do this for the character's other animations. So I'm going to go to his idle folder, right click here, and go Sprite Actions and Extract Sprites. Under the Sprite Track mode, I'm going to go Grid, and this is also 64 in the cell width. So if I just go 64 here, and I also go 64 in the cell height, it's basically going to split my images 64 by 64 across this image, and I can go extract and I'll extract all my characters' idle sprites. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to select his first sprite and his last sprite, and then right click, go create flipbook, and I'll call this man idle. So now I have an animation of my mannequin character when he's in his idle animation. So we're going to do a very similar thing for his jump and run animation. So I can go to his jump folder, right click, Sprite Actions and Extract Sprites. I'm going to go grid and make this 64, extract it, and then select both of these images, right click, create flipbook, and call this man jump. So I have an animation of my mannequin when he's jumping. I'm just going to change this to be 10 frames per second. And then we have one more animation, which is his running animation. I'll just right click on it, Sprite Actions and Extract Sprites, and go grid, and change this to be 64 by 64. Extract this, and then I'm going to create a flipbook out of this. I'm going to call this man run. So now we've created a flipbook for each of our characters' animations. The next thing to do is create a blueprint where we'll basically play and control this 2D player character. So to do that, let's just go back to our content folder, right click and create a new folder and call this blueprints. And we just want to head inside here and then right click and go blueprint class, and we're going to go to all classes and look for paper 2D. So this will basically create a player character which basically uses some flipbooks for his animations. So we just want to select this paper character, select it, and then I'm going to call this my paper 2D character. And we can just double click and head inside here. The first thing we want to do is just click this sprite. So under the components tab, we're going to go sprite, and here we basically just want to look and select our mannequin character's idle sprite. So this is going to be the default animation that our character does. The next thing we want to do is basically change it so that this capsule fits around our character. So this capsule basically represents our player character's collision. So we can change its half height and its radius. So I'm just going to adjust it so that it fits around my player character. So I found a capsule half height and radius that I'm happy with. The next thing we're going to do is basically add a camera to our player character. That way when we control them, we have something we can view and look at. So what we're going to do is just go to this components tab and go add. And the first thing we want to look for is a spring arm. This is going to be what the camera is attached to. And because we're creating a 2D player character, we kind of always want to view our character from this angle. So with the spring arm selected, just click this select and rotate objects gizmo, and then we want to rotate this 90 degrees, and then we're going to add a camera to the end of this spring arm. So to do that, select the spring arm and then go add, and then you want to look for camera and just select this camera one, and then we also just want to rotate this 90 degrees so that it's facing our player character. And then we want to go compile, and now we're just going to test that everything's working. So I'm just going to close this. And maybe, I know Unreal Engine keeps changing, so you may not start on this level. So what we're going to do is just go File and go New Level, and then select this basic template and click Create, and then go Save. And I'm going to right click, create a new folder and call this Levels. And then we want to go inside this folder and let's just call this New Map and go Save. And then drag in the paper 2D character. And we just want to select it, and under details, go pawn, and change this auto possess player to player 0. This way we're just going to automatically possess the paper 2D character inside of this level. And now if we go play, we should start as this 2D character inside of this world. Although you may have noticed something, we can't move or control our player character. So next, let's go over how we add some movement to our player character so that we can move and jump as them. To do that, first we want to go to Edit and then go to the Project Settings, and then scroll down and look for Input. And the first thing we're going to do is go to Action Mappings and click Add Action Mappings. Click here, and then we're going to call this Action Mapping Jump. And then we're going to make it so that whenever the player character clicks the jump button, they're going to jump in the air. So to configure what this button is going to be, we can just click here, and then under here I'm going to search and look for my spacebar, because I want it so that when the player clicks the spacebar that they jump. But you can change this to be whatever button you want this to be, so it can be 1 for example. And then you want to go to Axis Mappings and go Add Axis Mapping, and we're just going to call this Move Right. And under this keyboard you just want to look for the right button, and we want the scale to be 1. And then we want to add another axis mapping, and then we want this to be left, so we look for left, and then we want this scale to be -1. You'll see why we need these values to be 1 and -1 in a bit. Then we can close this and go back to our paper 2D side scroller character and go to the event graph where we can code some movement behavior. What we're going to do is just right click and look for jump, and then we want to look for this action mapping jump event that we just made. And when we press this button, we are going to look for the jump, and this will just make it so our character jumps in the air. And then when we release this button, we're going to look for the stop jump, and this will make it so our character stops jumping. Then for our movement, we just want to right click and look for move right. Oops, So we're going to right click and look for move right and select this axis event one. And then what we're going to do is just drag up here and look for add movement input. And we're going to hook this scale value into here. And then for this world direction, we just want this to have a value of 1 because with our 2D character, they basically move in the x-axis. So we want this to have a value of 1. So if I move this here, we can see that my character is moving the x-axis. So that's why we just want to have 1 here. And as you can see, this axis value will basically control where our player character moves. That's why when we configured this to be right, we wanted this to have a scale value of 1. And when we configure this to be left, we wanted this to have a scale value of -1. That way when we press the right button, he moves in the right direction. And that way when he presses the left button, he'll move in the opposite direction. So now I can go compile and just test that this all works. So I can go play, press spacebar and my character jumps. If I click the right button, my character moves to the right. If I click the left button, my character moves to the left. So now we've set up some movement for our player character. Nice, so we've got movement working. The next thing we're going to do is make it so that our character uses the animations that we set up for him. So to set that up, let's go back to our paper 2D character. And I'm just going to comment both of these. So I'm going to comment this and call this jump. And I'm going to comment this and call this movement. And then what we're going to do is right click and look for add custom event and call this handle animation. And basically every node after here, we're basically going to make it so it updates and handle our player character's animations. And we want this to be event tick, so basically every frame it's always playing our character's correct animation. So what I'm going to do is on this event tick, just drag off here and look for handle animation. And now event tick is going to run everything inside of here. So the first thing we're going to do is see if our player character is moving, and if they're moving, we'll make them do their running animation. So to check that, let's drag in our character movement, and then drag off here and look for get velocity. And then from here we can drag and look for vector length. And if this vector length is ever greater than 0, that basically means our player character is moving, so we're going to make them do their running animation. So I'm just going to drag off here and look for select, and we just want to select this one, the one with like the 3 arrows. Then we want to drag in our sprite and then drag off here and look for set Flipbook and hook this return value into here and hook handle animation into set Flipbook. So if our player character's speed is ever greater than 0, we can make them do their man run animation, and if this is false, then we can make them do their man idle animation. So now our player character will be able to go from their idle to their running animation. Next, we're going to set it up so that our player character can do their jump and fall animation. So to do this, we just want to drag in our character movement and check to see if the player character is falling. And if this is true, we're just going to drag off the return value and look for branch and hook from this hand animation to here. So if our player character is not falling, then they'll either be idle or doing their running animation. And then if our character is falling, what we're going to do is just copy the set Flipbook bit. So I'm going to go Control C and then Control V. And then we're going to check to see if the player character is falling up or falling down. So to do that, we just want to right click and look for get velocity. Then we're going to right click on this return value and look for split structure pin. And then we want to see if the C value is less than 0. And if this is, that basically means our player character is falling. And so we're going to make them do their falling animation. And if this is greater than 0, that means our player character is jumping up. So then we're going to make them do their jumping up animation. So we're going to drag off here and look for select. Scroll down and look for this one again. Hook return value into here. And if this is true, we're going to make them do their mannequin falling animation. And if this is false, we're going to make them do their mannequin jumping up animation. And we can just hook true into here and go compile. So now our player character should have some animations. So if I go play, if I move, we can see he does his running animation. If I jump, we can see when he's initially jumping, he does his jumping animation. And when he's falling down, he does his falling down animation. So with this, we've kind of set up movement for our player character. The next thing we're going to do is set up rotation for our player character. Because we can see if I click the left mouse button, our player character doesn't turn around and it looks kind of weird. So we can set that up now. So first I'm just going to move all of this kind of like down. So I'm just going to comment all of this and call this handle animation. And then what we're going to do is create another custom event, and this is going to handle our player character's rotation. So I'm going to right click, look for add custom event, and call this handle rotation. And then I'm going to go back to my event tick, and after we handle our animation, I'm going to look for handle rotation and hook this up here. So before we make our handle rotation bit, we're going to need to adjust our movement blueprint just a bit. So I'm going to move this down a bit. And the first thing I'm going to do is we need to go to our variables tab, create a new variable, and call it is moving right. So we're creating this variable so that we always know whether our player character is moving towards the right or moving towards the left. And what we're going to do is check this axis value. So if this axis value is ever greater than 0, that means our player character is kind of moving to the right. So what we're going to do is just drag off here and look for branch. And if this is true, then we're going to set our is moving right variable to be true. So just check this and hook this up to here. And hook this into add movement input. If this is false, we're going to do another branch and check to see if this axis value is less than 0. And if this is true, that means our player character is moving towards the left. So we're going to drag in our is moving right variable and just set it so that it's not true. And hook this into add movement input. And then if this is false, we can just hook this into add movement input. And I'll just make it so that this comment is a bit wider. Now that we've set that up, we can set up our handle rotation blueprint. The first thing we're going to do for this is drag in our character movement and get the velocity of our character. And then what we're going to do is just right click here and look for split structure pin. And we're only going to be checking our character's velocity in the x-axis because with our 2D characters, they only move in the x-axis. And then what we're going to do is just drag off our velocity x and look for compare float and hook up handle rotation into here. So we're always going to be comparing our character's velocity in the x-axis with this value. So if our character's velocity is greater than 0, what we're going to do is make it so that they're facing the right direction. To do that, we can just right click and look for get controller, and then off here we can just look for set control rotation, and then just right click here and look for split structure pin and just make it 0 in everything here. If this is false and say our player character's velocity is less than 0, we're going to make it so that their sprite is basically facing the opposite direction. To do this, we can just copy this get controller bit, hook it up here, although this time we'll make it so that this z value is 180, and this will make it so that they're in the opposite direction. Then let's say if our character's velocity is 0, we don't know if we should be facing the right or the left. That's why we created this is moving right variable, and what we're going to do is just drag it in and drag off here and look for branch and hook up here into here. And if our player character was last moving to the right, we'll make it so that they're facing the right, and if our player character was last moving to the left, we'll make it so they're facing the left. And now I click compile, we can test this out. So I click play and I move to the right, I move to the right, I click left. We can see that it's kind of not working and looks a bit weird, and that is because we need to change a couple of settings inside of the camera. So if I go to my paper 2D, what I'm going to do is go to our spring arm and go to the rotation, and currently it'll be relative by default. We want to change this to be world, and now I can compile, and if I click play, we can see if I move to the right, my character moves to the right, if I move to the left, my character moves to the left. I can click spacebar and I can jump. Although there are a couple more things we need to do just to polish out this system a bit more. So I head back to my paper 2D character. Under the is moving right, just check it so this is true, and this will make it so that our player character is always basically starting facing towards the right. If you want, inside of the paper 2D character, you can change some of the things such as its speed. So I go to my character movement and under details, look for speed. By default, his default walking speed is 600, but if I change this to something like 100 and go compile, he's going to be much slower. So you can basically use that if you want to control how fast your character is going to be. So you can see he's moving much slower now. By default, the player character only has one jump, but maybe you want it so that the player character has multiple jumps. So to do that, All you're going to do is just select the paper 2D character itself, and under the details, look for jump. And you can see that he starts with a jump max count of 1, but I can change this to be something like 3 if I wanted to. Compile and go play. And now if I click spacebar, he has 3 jumps before he runs out of jumps that he can do. So that's just a nifty setting you can change there. Right now, I've currently not set up the camera to be correct. So if we go back to our paper 2D character, what we're going to do is go to our camera, just remove the details here, and we can see the projection mode is perspective. For 2D games, it's best to have a camera which is orthographic, which will basically make everything flat. So if I go play now, you're going to see everything's kind of flat, because with the orthographic camera, we're basically making everything flat. So that's why our background kind of looks weird. But I also imported a background and a couple of blocks that we can basically use as platforms inside of this project. So we're going to import those now. So we can go to our tile folder, and I have this gray square. And what we're going to do is just right click on it, go sprite actions and create sprite. And this is going to be a tile which we can place in our world. So what I'm going to do is just move my 2D character up a bit, drag in this gray square. And what I like to do is normally make it so that the tiles are on the same layer as the player character. That way you can stand on them. So if we select our player character, just going to move this here, we can see that his location is -100. And if I just select this gray square, I'm going to make it -100. That way they're on the same layer. And I can use this scale objects tool to basically kind of adjust the size of it. And we can also use here to adjust the snap of the scale. So using this, you can kind of create some basic platforms. And I'm going to create another one here. And if I go play, we're going to be able to see those great platforms that I just made. And then for our background, what we can do is just go to my background folder, right click on it, and go sprite actions, create sprite. And I'm just going to add this background, and I can just put this behind, and I'm going to make it a bit bigger. And we're basically going to have this black background inside of our game now. So you can just change that background to be any image that you want. And as you can see, when my character kind of moves down, it looks kind of weird, and the camera's a bit weird. In order to make the camera a bit nicer, we can enable some cam lag on it. So I'm going to select my 2D paper 2D character, go edit, and go to my spring arm, and then what we're going to do in details is just look for lag. Sorry, it's better to look for lag, and then click enable cam lag, and you can control the speed of the lag here, but I'm going to leave out the default setting of 10. And now if I click play, we can see that the camera is a bit smoother and just looks a bit nicer. And with the orthographic camera, if you want it so it's a bit more zoomed out, because as you can see, it's quite close to the player character, what we can do is easily at any time, just go here, go to our camera, and then we can go to the auth width, and the larger we make this value, the more zoomed out the camera will be. So I make this something like 1200, and compile, and go play. We can see that the camera starts a lot more zoomed out, so you can just do that if you want the camera to be a bit more zoomed out. One more thing with the camera settings, so I briefly had to close my project and then reopen it, and when I came back, maybe it was an update or something, when I clicked play, I found that the lighting was really weird. So you can see like the level looks really weird and the lighting's super strange. So I'm just going to go over how to fix that in case you encounter this problem. So there are a couple more settings we need to change in the camera. So if we just select it, then what we're going to do is select the camera, and then under the details we're going to go to brightness and just check this min brightness and this max brightness, and I think a value of 4 works well for both of these. The lower you make this value, the darker it will be, and the higher you make this value, the brighter it will be. So a value of 4, just make sure you check both of these boxes, and then if you click play, the lighting should be a bit better. You may notice that there are these like weird, if you like look really closely, there are these weird grey squares in the sprites. To fix that, we basically just need to remove the directional lighting, and then if we click play, it should look normal again. So I just wanted to go over that in case you encountered that problem. So that's all for this tutorial. If you're subscribed to my Patreon, you'll be able to download the project files to this tutorial. Shout out to Joseph. Anyway, if you enjoyed, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.